Afternoon, Ben.
Hello.
You've got us a bit of a cattle special now.
Yes, cattle special. So the first one relates to what is an increasing trend now of outwintering cattle, removing costs and outwintering cattle to save housing costs through the winter. And this farm has had cattle for a long time. It's a real good operation, spring-born, and the calves are weaned in November. And the decision was made not to house the cows and the calves, but to leave the calves out because they were big enough and hairy enough, and the dams were housed. Now, obviously, through the winter, we had a pretty mild winter just gone, and one of the considerations would have been, were these cattle getting worms outside? So the strategy that was adopted was composite worm egg counts done at monthly intervals throughout the winter. And as it happened, each of those sampling occasions, there were no worms seen, or the worm burden was very low. So that happened throughout the winter. And then the next slide shows that when it got to mid-March, reasonably quickly, 3 calves lost condition. And just in the, for something to do, they were wormed. 2 of them seemed to recover, but 1 of them died. And on post-mortem, you can see here in this picture on the right, really marked Morocco leather, like bubble wrap pictures of the abomasum there, which is diagnostic of either chronic or sudden emergence of ostertagia in the abomasum, the ostertagia having probably been there all winter, with the calves not having been wormed because the worm egg counts were all low. And I think what happened here was you have type 2 disease, where the worms kind of suddenly emerged in response to the increasing day length and warmer temperatures and all the rest of it. It is likely, I think, that the worms suddenly came out. That explained the sudden loss in condition in these calves, and why 1 of them died, because the process had already happened by the time it was wormed. And I raised this issue because it is a difficult one to know how to deal with, for this reason, which is that the worm egg counts that you're doing throughout the winter may not be the best proxy for the total number of worms, A, because it's an average of an average, and B, because the worms that are in the abomasum might not actually be laying many eggs. I do think that measuring growth weights would probably help, even though logistically in the winter that might be difficult outside, I suppose. Pepsinogen also would probably be okay.
The big risk, Ben, as you said, is that they get a trickle infection through the winter. And these worms all go to sleep in the abomasal wall. When they start to emerge, they can all do it at the same time, and then you get a sudden and severe damage. And if you wait for it to happen, it can be too late.
Yes,
as we saw with this one. So,
yes,
yeah. What do we do? And it might be that for outwintered calves, a strategic dose at some point is necessary. It's just, how do we make sure we time that accurately so that you're not having to repeat dose them?
Yes, I completely agree. And at what point do we think they stop picking them up from the pasture, especially in a mild winter?
Yeah.
But I agree. I do think a sort of clear out dose, there is a case for that, even if it is rather arbitrary. The next one is some heifers which were bought in, and this is another sort of cautionary tale and slightly difficult one to deal with. 20 bulling heifers bought in spring, bulled outside and housed. 1 month after housing, they were given a pour on ivermectin, just to, in case they picked up any worms, lungworms or gutworms during that grazing season. And these cattle did quite badly over the winter. Condition was variable. There was some, when they did calve down, some hung their cleansings and things like that. And 1 of them actually died 10 days after it calved, and came to me, and this is what I saw in its lungs: marked overinflation, evidence of gross bronchitis, and to my surprise, this was in middle of April, just gone, live adult lungworms in the trachea, which you can see there, those arrows pointing to it on the right hand side there. So remember that these animals were housed. 1 month later, they were wormed with ivermectin. there's no chance of them being reinfected once they were housed, so it is likely that these were resistant, the lungworms in these animals were resistant to the ivermectin, and this is not the first time this has happened, and there seem to be increasing reports that this might be happening. Now,
I guess we do need to check that every animal got the correct dose, but
yes,
that's always first on the list. But if they've been dosed correctly with the right amount of the right product, then that would suggest these are survivors and therefore resistant, wouldn't it?
Yeah, agreed. The message really is to have it in the back of your mind that anthelmintic resistance in lungworm probably is being increasingly recognized, and if the cattle don't respond as you expect, then have that as a differential diagnosis. And I think if you do suspect it, then probably a Behrman's is probably the best thing to do. And of course the same goes for cattle outside. If they don't respond as you expect them to, then further investigation is definitely required, and if any do die, then post-mortem will tell you that that's what's happened. And it's also worth mentioning that the More Done, I think, are doing a project on this exact subject, so they would be worth contacting if you come across this syndrome.
Yeah. And as we said in an earlier chat, Ben, if you've got cattle coughing outside, lungworm should be pretty high up your
lungworm till proven otherwise, really.
Yeah. Even if it's midwinter, if they're outside and it's a mild winter. Yeah. So, excellent. That's two very good cases and two good watchouts.
They're cases that aren't simple, but the better we get at things, possibly, the more we solve the simple ones and we're left with the awkward ones. But there we are. Something to think about driving around.
Yeah. Thanks again, Ben. Really good.
Good hope. See you soon.